What if the cure for modern burnout isn't found in doing more, but in doing nothing at all? Taoist masters called it Wu Wei, effortless action. Not laziness, not apathy, but a hidden force that flows through nature itself. For centuries, emperors, monks, and philosophers guarded this wisdom because it revealed a terrifying truth about ambition. The harder you push, the faster you break. Today, science confirms what Taoism knew all along. The question is, can you learn to stop before burnout consumes you? For centuries, Taoist masters whispered of a hidden power called Wu Wei, effortless action. On the surface, it sounds like laziness, but they warned Wu Wei was not idleness. It was survival. It was the secret current of life itself, and those who ignored it were doomed to break under their own weight. Imagine a river. It never strains, never forces, yet it carves mountains into valleys, stone into sand. It is patient, silent, unstoppable. The Taoists saw this river as a mirror of life itself. They asked, why are humans the only ones trying to sprint upstream? Today, you and I live in an age of constant striving. Deadlines chase us. Phones buzz without mercy. Success demands endless proving. We have been taught to believe that if we just work harder, sacrifice more, push longer, happiness will reward us. But what if this is the greatest lie of the modern age? Because the harder you push, the faster you break. Psychologists call it burnout. Taoists called it forcing. And they warned that forcing against the flow of life doesn't just exhaust the body, it exhausts the soul. But here's the part that should make your blood run cold. Taoist sages believed this endless forcing actually shortens life itself. Like a bow stretched too tightly, the spirit eventually snaps. And yet, here we are, worshiping at the altar of productivity, applauding exhaustion as if it were a crown of honor. The ancient masters had a word for our madness. They called it the sickness of striving. And they offered one antidote, Wu Wei, the wisdom of doing nothing. But don't mistake this for passivity. Wu Wei is not apathy. It is not giving up. It is learning the most dangerous art of all, aligning so deeply with nature that the world begins to move through you. In the Tao Te Ching, the legendary Laozi wrote, "The Tao never does anything, and yet through it, all things are done." At first, this sounds possible. How can doing nothing achieve everything? But think of the river again. It doesn't wrestle the mountain. It waits. It wears down the stone grain by grain, year after year. The river never doubts its path, and yet it shapes landscapes without effort. This is the essence of Wu Wei. To act with the current, not against it. To release the frantic need to control outcomes, and to trust in timing, rhythm, and flow. But here's the chilling part. Taoist masters knew that most people would never embrace it. Because Wu Wei demands the one thing humans fear the most: surrender. You see, surrender feels like death to the ego. We crave control, certainty, domination over life. Wu Wei asks us to let go. And so, instead of yielding like the river, we fight like the storm. Instead of bending like the tree, we snap like the brittle branch. And here is where the story becomes terrifyingly modern. Because what Taoist sages saw in their quiet mountains, science is now confirming in crowded cities. Rest, recovery, stillness. These are not luxuries. They are the very conditions for survival. Burnout is not a sign of weakness. It is proof that we are living in direct opposition to the laws of nature. And yet, even as we collapse under exhaustion, society tells us to try harder, move faster, achieve more. The treadmill speeds up, even as our legs give out. So the question becomes urgent. What happens when an entire civilization ignores Wu Wei? History provides the answer, because hidden in ancient records are stories of kings and emperors who dared to practice this strange wisdom. Men who discovered that by doing less, they achieved more. And others who refused to listen and destroyed themselves through endless striving. You wake up tired. You open the screen. Messages flood in. Tasks multiply. The day has not begun, yet your mind is already sprinting. You promise yourself you will rest later. Later never comes. This is the trap. We have been trained to worship effort for its own sake. Do more, prove more, show more. If you stop, you fear you will fall behind. If you slow down, you fear you will be forgotten. So you push. Then you push harder. And slowly, you begin to fade. Taoist sages had a word for this habit. They called it forcing. Forcing is not action. Forcing is fear wearing the mask of discipline. It is the belief that only pressure creates progress. It is the voice that says, if I do not hold everything together, everything will fall apart. But look closely. The more you force, the more life resists. The tighter you grip, the faster things slip away. Your focus scatters. Your sleep thins. Your joy drains. You are not living. You are bracing. Ask yourself, when did effort become a cage? The Tao offers a different law, the law of flow, the law of timing, the law of enough. To see it, return to the river. A single drop seems weak. A rock seems strong. Yet over 1,000 years, water shapes stone without strain. It does not force. It follows its path. It yields. And in yielding, it wins. Taoists taught this not as poetry, but as survival. Be like water. Choose the path that fits your nature. Act without fighting yourself. Modern life teaches the opposite. We stack tasks beyond our limits. We trade silence for noise. We chase goals that do not belong to us. We treat the mind like a machine and wonder why it overheats. Each time we feel the warning inside, that flutter of dread, that empty ache, we silence it with more doing. But the body keeps the score. The nervous system hardens. The breath grows shallow. The heart forgets how to feel safe. You call it normal. It is not normal. It is a slow emergency. Here is the paradox. You think you are in control when you force. In truth, forcing is a loss of control. It is reactivity. It is panic in motion. Wu Wei invites a different skill, the art of non-forcing. To act with clear intent at the right moment, and only as much as needed. Nothing extra, nothing wasted. Listen to the rhythm of nature. The tree does not pull itself taller. The moon does not hurry the tide. The seed does not argue with the season. Growth is real. Urgency is an illusion. You might say, if I slow down, I will lose everything. But look at what the frantic pace has already taken. Your mornings, your patience, your sense of meaning. The trap is not in doing. The trap is in never stopping long enough to choose what is worth doing. There is another cost. Forcing blinds your judgment. When you are tense, you make short, sharp moves. You react. You miss signals. You ignore timing. You grab what is close and lose what matters. Flow opens the field. In stillness, you see the path that strain could never reveal. Here is a practice. Before you act, ask 3 quiet questions. 1. Is this aligned with who I am? 2. Is this the right moment? 3. What is the least I need to do for the greatest effect? If the answer is unclear, wait. Waiting is not wasting. Waiting gathers power. This is hard at first. The mind will panic. It will beg for noise. It will tell you that pausing is dangerous, that the world will move on without you. Remember the river. Remember the seasons. Remember that real strength does not shout. There is a story the sages loved. A young seeker asked a master, "How do I move faster?" The master said, "Move with the path that moves you." The seeker did not understand. So the master poured water into a bowl and tipped it. The water flowed without effort. That, the master said, is the speed you are looking for. The trap of endless striving is simple. You mistake friction for progress. You confuse exhaustion with achievement. And in that confusion, you burn the very fuel you need to live. Wu Wei does not ask you to stop living. It asks you to stop fighting life. Breathe. Feel your weight in the chair. Let the shoulders soften. Notice how the world keeps turning without your panic. Notice how presence opens space. In that space, the next right move appears. And this is only the beginning, because there were rulers who learned this secret. They governed with restraint. They intervened less and achieved more. They shaped peace not by force, but by removing force. Their way seemed like doing nothing, yet through it, everything was done. How did they do it? What happened when they stepped back? And why did their rivals, who clung to control, fall so quickly? There was once a ruler in ancient China who held more power than anyone in his land. Armies obeyed him. Courts feared him. The fate of millions rested on his decisions. And yet, history remembers him not for his commands, but for his restraint. His name was Emperor Wen of the Han Dynasty. He reigned more than 2,000 years ago, during a time when most kings believed that control was the only path to order. Heavy taxes, strict punishments, endless decrees, this was the way rulers held their grip. But Emperor Wen did something radical. He began to rule through Wu Wei. Instead of forcing the empire into submission, he stepped back. He reduced taxes to almost nothing. He lessened punishments until even minor crimes were met with forgiveness. He let nature and people breathe. At first, his ministers panicked. They begged him to tighten the reins, to intervene more, to show strength. Wen refused. And then something extraordinary happened. Without the constant weight of fear and punishment, farmers grew more food. Trade flourished. People lived with less anxiety, and so they worked with more energy. The empire healed itself not through command, but through space. The Taoists had warned, forcing life drains life. Wen proved the opposite. Stepping back allows life to restore itself. He did less and achieved more. But not all rulers trusted this wisdom. Only a few decades earlier, another emperor had tried the opposite. Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, was known for his obsession with control. He demanded walls, armies, monuments, and even sought to conquer death itself through dangerous elixirs. He forced and forced until his empire cracked under the strain. Within a few years of his death, his dynasty collapsed. His attempt to dominate nature left nothing but ruins. Two rulers, two paths. One stepped back, and his dynasty thrived. One forced everything, and his dynasty shattered. This is the terrifying power of Wu Wei. It is not passive. It is not weak. It is a law of nature that rewards those who yield and breaks those who resist. Pause here and notice the mirror. In your own life, how often do you rule like Qin? Gripping harder, piling more pressure, demanding impossible results? And how often do you rule like Wen? Stepping back, allowing life to unfold, letting growth emerge without strain? Wu Wei shows us that real strength is not domination, but discernment. Wen's empire did not collapse when he loosened control. It blossomed. And this is where the Taoists revealed a deeper warning. Forcing is not only dangerous for leaders, it is dangerous for anyone who clings too tightly to outcomes. Because when you live like Qin, constantly chasing, constantly tightening, eventually you collapse under your own empire of stress. But when you live like Wen, giving yourself permission to release, to trust, to pause, life begins to flourish in ways effort could never produce. The Taoists called this the paradox of effortless action. By letting go, you gain. By stepping back, you advance. By yielding, you endure. But this raises a chilling question. If doing nothing can be so powerful, why do we still resist it? Why do we cling to control even as it destroys us? Perhaps because surrender feels like weakness. Perhaps because we fear the silence that follows when effort stops. Or perhaps because no one ever taught us how to wait. Emperor Wen's story shows us something almost unbelievable. By stepping back, he achieved more than those who pushed endlessly. This is the essence of Wu Wei. And yet, it is the part most people misunderstand. Because when you first hear the wisdom of doing nothing, it sounds like apathy, laziness, failure. But that is not what the Taoists meant. Wu Wei is not inaction. It is effortless action. Think of a bow pulled too tight. Hold it long enough, and the wood will crack. Forcing life is the same. Wu Wei is the art of knowing when to pull and when to release. It is the difference between exhaustion and rhythm. The Tao Te Ching, written over 2,000 years ago, hides this paradox in simple lines. The Tao never does anything, and yet, through it, all things are done. To the untrained ear, it sounds like nonsense. But look at nature, and it becomes obvious. The tree bends in the storm, and so it survives. The rigid branch resists, and so it breaks. The valley does not fight for water, and yet it receives every stream. The strongest structures in nature are not those that resist, but those that yield. Wu Wei is this yielding. It is not about being still forever. It is about acting in harmony with the right moment. The archer does not release the arrow before the target appears. The farmer does not harvest before the season ripens. The Taoists saw that forcing action before its time was worse than doing nothing at all. Here is where the paradox emerges. By doing less, you often accomplish more. By waiting, you often arrive faster. By surrendering, you often gain control. The Taoists warned that those who live by constant effort burn out before they reach their destination, while those who align with timing are carried like the river, further, faster, with less pain. Ask yourself, how many times have you tried to force results before they were ready? How many times have you demanded answers, pushed for outcomes, or clung to control, only to find yourself drained and defeated? Now think of the times when you let go, when you stopped pushing, when you gave space for something to unfold. The call returned. The solution appeared. The path opened. That is Wu Wei at work. Effortless, but not empty. But here is the chilling part. To the human ego, this way of living feels impossible. We have been raised to believe that without constant pressure, nothing moves. That silence is wasted time. That waiting is weakness. Wu Wei exposes the truth. Our obsession with control is the very thing destroying us. And yet, most people will never embrace it. Why? Because Wu Wei requires trust. Trust in timing. Trust in flow. Trust in a force larger than the self. And surrendering to that force feels like death to the ego. The Taoists knew this secret thousands of years ago, but only now is modern science beginning to confirm it. Rest is not waste. Stillness is not weakness. Doing nothing is not failure. It is the exact condition your brain and body need to recover, to create, to thrive. And this is where the story turns. Because Wu Wei was never meant to stay hidden in temples or whispered in ancient texts. It is alive in your nervous system. It is written into your biology. And today, science can finally explain why. For centuries, Taoist sages were dismissed as mystics, speaking in riddles about rivers, valleys, and storms. Yet modern science is finally beginning to prove what they whispered long ago. Stillness heals, and forcing destroys. Consider what happens in the brain when you stop. Neuroscientists call it the default mode network. When you rest, when your attention drifts, when you stare at the ceiling, doing nothing, your brain doesn't shut off. It reorganizes. It connects. It repairs. Creativity, memory, and insight ignite in this hidden state. That flash of clarity in the shower, the sudden solution on a walk, the breakthrough after sleep. These are not accidents. They are Wu Wei in action. Wisdom that arrives only when you stop chasing it. But here is the tragedy. Modern life leaves almost no space for this. Phones fill silence. Deadlines invade weekends. Every empty moment is stolen by a screen. We drown the very stillness our minds require. And then we wonder why burnout spreads like wildfire. Taoist sages would have called this madness. They warned that when you force without pause, you sever your link to the Tao, the natural current of life. Today, psychologists call it chronic stress. The name has changed, but the pattern is the same. Forcing without end breaks the system. Pause for a moment. Feel your body right now. If you are tired, tense, or foggy, you are living proof of this pattern. You are not broken. You are overforced. Modern studies on burnout reveal something chilling. Exhaustion is not just about working too long. It is about working against nature's rhythm. Sleep ignored, meals rushed, silence replaced with noise. Bit by bit, the nervous system frays. Anxiety rises, memory collapses, motivation dies. This is not weakness. It is biology screaming for Wu Wei. And when you answer, when you allow stillness, the body repairs itself with breathtaking precision. Cortisol falls, blood pressure steadies, the mind resets. Even the immune system strengthens. Stillness is not wasted time. It is medicine. Here's a story the Taoists loved. A monk was sweeping leaves when a young traveler arrived, desperate for wisdom. "Teach me quickly," the traveler demanded. The monk kept sweeping. "I have no time," the traveler begged. "I must hurry." The monk finally looked up and said, "Then you must wait even longer." Science now confirms this riddle. Rushing blinds the mind. Pausing sharpens it. Rest does not delay your progress. It multiplies it. Flow researchers have discovered something profound. The most productive people are not those who push endlessly, but those who know how to enter states of deep focus and then withdraw into recovery. It is a rhythm. Effort, pause, effort, pause. Just like breath, just like the seasons. Taoists saw this cycle everywhere. Modern science proves that ignoring it leads to collapse. And here is the frightening part. Many of us are so addicted to forcing that the first taste of stillness feels unbearable. The silence feels heavy. The body panics. The mind shouts, "You are wasting time." This reaction is not truth. It is withdrawal. It is the nervous system detoxing from a lifetime of overstriving. Wu Wei begins here, in this uncomfortable pause. If you can remain in stillness long enough to cross the panic, something shifts. The mind softens. The breath deepens. awareness clears. Suddenly, the silence is no longer frightening. It is fertile. This is the soil where creativity, wisdom, and resilience grow. Modern research and ancient Taoism agree. Doing nothing is not nothing. It is the secret engine of renewal. And yet, a question remains. Knowing this truth is not enough. How do you practice it in a world that constantly demands more? How do you live Wu Wei, not as philosophy, but as survival? The Taoists left us a map, a set of shifts, subtle, powerful, practical, to bring effortless action into daily life. And if you learn them, you will discover that the wisdom of doing nothing is not an escape from life. It is the way to finally live it. We have walked through the warnings. We have seen the collapse of those who forced too much and the peace of those who stepped back. But knowledge alone is not enough. Wu Wei must be lived. The Taoists never left us with empty poetry. They left us with a map. And within this map are 4 shifts, practices that seem small, but change everything when lived with intention. From childhood, you were told that success comes only through struggle. Push harder, try longer, never stop. But Taoist wisdom says the opposite. The more you force, the further the goal drifts. Think of water in your hands. Squeeze too tightly, and it escapes. Cup your palms gently, and it remains. Wu Wei begins when you release the death grip on results. Ask yourself before each task, am I forcing this or flowing with it? If you are grinding only to prove yourself, step back. If the effort feels natural, continue. Nature has its rhythm. Trees bloom only when the season is right. Rivers rise only after the rain. But humans, we demand everything now. Wu Wei teaches patience. The right moment has more power than endless moments forced too soon. Think of the archer. Release too early, and the arrow falls. Release at the right moment, and the arrow flies true. Begin noticing timing. Ask, is this the season for action or the season for waiting? You will find that pausing often carries you further than pushing. Doing nothing is not wasted time. It is preparation. It is sharpening the blade before the cut. Modern science calls this recovery. Taoists called it harmony. Stillness is not the absence of life. It is the soil in which life grows. Set aside moments each day for Wu Wei. No screen, no plan. Simply sit, walk, breathe. Let thoughts rise and fall like clouds. At first, the silence may feel unbearable. That is the shadow of forcing leaving your body. Stay long enough, and the silence becomes fertile. From this stillness, clarity will rise. Problems will solve themselves. Directions will appear. Hustle is noise. Harmony is rhythm. In hustle, you run faster and faster until you collapse. In harmony, you move with balance. Effort, pause, effort, pause. Like the breath, like the seasons, like the tide. Harmony does not mean you stop working. It means you work in ways that nourish you instead of drain you. It means choosing actions that align with your nature instead of betraying it for approval. When you live in harmony, you discover something extraordinary. Life stops feeling like a battle. It begins to feel like a dance. These 4 shifts may sound simple, but do not underestimate them. They are weapons against the sickness of striving. They are medicine for burnout, and they are doorways to a life lived in rhythm with the Tao. But here is the warning. The first steps into Wu Wei can feel terrifying. When you stop forcing, you may feel guilty. When you rest, you may feel lazy. When you wait, you may feel left behind. This panic is not truth. It is the residue of a culture addicted to control. The Taoists called this the shadow of forcing. It whispers, if you slow down, you will lose everything. But the opposite is true. Only when you stop gripping so tightly can you finally hold what matters. Pause here. Imagine what would change in your life if you lived these 4 shifts. Imagine trading exhaustion for rhythm, noise for stillness, hustle for harmony. Which shift do you need most right now? Write it in the comments. Declare it so others on this same path can see they are not alone. Because Wu Wei is not just philosophy. It is a revolution. And once you glimpse it, you cannot return to the old ways of forcing. But there is one more stage we must uncover. The Taoists left a final warning. They saw what happens when people try to escape forcing, but fail to see the last trap. We have reached the heart of Taoist wisdom. Wu Wei is not about passivity. It is not about giving up. It is about reclaiming the rhythm that life was always offering you. But here is the paradox. Stepping into Wu Wei feels like losing control, when in truth, it is the moment you finally gain it. The Taoists called this liberation, a freedom deeper than ambition, safer than control, stronger than fear. Think again of the river. It does not resist the mountain. It does not panic at the obstacle. It moves around, over and through, until the stone itself begins to yield. The river teaches us this. You do not need to conquer life. You only need to stop resisting it. And yet, here is the final warning. The first steps into Wu Wei feel like collapse. Your ego panics. It whispers, you are falling behind. You are wasting time. You will be forgotten. This is the sickness of striving, trying to pull you back. The Taoists knew this voice well. They taught, the last temptation of control is the fear of surrender. If you push through this fear, something remarkable happens. The body softens. The mind clears. The weight you carried was never the world. It was your grip on the world. Release it, and life begins to move for you. History shows us what happens. The rulers who forced collapsed. The rulers who trusted thrived. The same law applies to you. Force breaks. Flow endures. But Wu Wei is more than survival. It is transformation. When you live in rhythm, you discover that less brings more, that rest multiplies strength, that silence reveals wisdom. You no longer confuse exhaustion with achievement or noise with meaning. This is what liberation looks like. Working, but not grinding. Creating, but not draining. Loving, but not clinging. Living, but not forcing. Pause now. Imagine yourself walking with this rhythm. The tension gone, the fear dissolved. Each action taken because it is right, not because it is pressured. This is Wu Wei. This is freedom. And here lies the greatest secret of all. Wu Wei does not make you powerless. It makes you unstoppable, because no obstacle can exhaust you. No season can trap you. No failure can define you. You flow. You endure. You arrive. But Taoist sages left us with one final truth, and it may be the hardest of all. Wu Wei cannot be forced. You cannot turn it into another goal, another project, another ambition. The moment you try to control it, you lose it. Wu Wei appears only when you surrender. So the question is no longer whether you understand it. The question is, can you let go? What happens when you stop fighting the river? And finally, let it carry you. Before you leave, remember this. Taoist sages warned that the greatest danger is not just in forcing yourself, but in following a world that forces blindly. Because history shows us something chilling. When the crowd moves in one direction, it is almost always the wrong one. In my next video, I'll reveal why collective thinking destroys clarity and how to protect your mind before it's swallowed by the herd.